This is Mencari, Australia. Breaking news.
This is a breaking news update from Mencari News, Australia. We're coming to you live from Sydney, where New South Wales Premier Chris Minns and New South Wales Police Commissioner Mal Lanyon are holding a press conference delivering the Bondi Massacre updates. Stay tuned as we cover key developments from this unfolding situation.
New South Wales Police Commissioner Mal Lanyon for an update on the terrible events of last Sunday, a terrorism event, mass casualties, many people have been killed, and it's my sad duty to report that there are still 23 people in New South Wales hospitals. This morning I was able to attend Rabbi Eli's funeral, which was a celebration of a man that was a gift for our city and someone who did so much, not just for the Jewish community, but for everybody that lives in New South Wales. He had a particular joy for Hanukkah, where he would dance down the street, and he will be sorely missed by his family, by his friends. It's a terrible, terrible crime, a shocking tragedy for New South Wales. This afternoon I'll be attending, at the invitation of the community, Rabbi Yaakov's funeral in Macquarie Park. Again, I expect that to be very large as the community, the Jewish community, comes together to mourn the loss of these senior clerics, these beautiful men who've been pillars of that community for such a long period of time. I'm also here to report that on the 22nd and 23rd of December, the government will call back the New South Wales Parliament to deal with urgent legislation that we believe is required pre-Christmas to keep the community safe and ensure there's unambiguous laws in place when it comes to public safety. Firstly, in relation to firearms legislation in the state, we are proposing a bill which hasn't been finally drafted, but we will share with the opposition as soon as possible, to cap the number of firearms, to reclassify straight pull-up and pump-action shotguns, to look at reducing magazine capacity for shotguns, for prohibiting belt-fed magazines in those shotguns, and crucially removing NCAT as an appeal mechanism once a designation has been made about withdrawing a licence from the registered authority. Now, at the moment, New South Wales Police routinely yank licences from gun holders and licence holders that they suspect or fear are a threat to the community. Those appeals are heard in NCAT, and they're often, police's objections are often overturned, and the guns remain with that individual. We'll extinguish that appeal pathway. I also want to say today that I am firmly of the view, having spoken with many community members, not just from the Jewish community, but right across Sydney, that protests right now in Sydney would be incredibly terrible for our community. In fact, they would rip apart our community, particularly protests about international events. I completely understand that there are people concerned about what's happening overseas, and of course they've got every right to be concerned, but my worry is about what's happening in Sydney right now. We'll look at, my concern is that a mass demonstration in this combustible situation with our multicultural community could light a flame that would be impossible to extinguish. So we're looking at reforms whereby when there is a terrorism designation in the state, the Police Commissioner may not accept applications for protests on the grounds that it will both stretch police resources and, secondly, add to community disharmony and, as a result, a combustible situation in the state. I'm not aware of any protests at the moment, but I don't want to be in a situation where a last-minute Supreme Court approval means that police have to divert resources away from community safety or Operation Shelter, and I'm faced with the situation where the community is ripped apart because of a protest relating to international events. My responsibility right now is both community safety and community harmony, and I have to explore all possible ways of ensuring that we lower the temperature in New South Wales and Sydney, that there are opportunities to come together, and that, for example, slogans or protests or marches don't tip into hate speech and further exacerbate an already combustible, difficult environment for not just police, but community leaders, political leaders, religious leaders in New South Wales. It's all of our responsibility to come together during this period. I have to be in a position where we've got all available resources to do just that. and that'll be part of a package of changes that we introduce into the Parliament on Monday. I'm going to pass over to the Police Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Premier. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to provide an update on our 2 injured police officers. I had the opportunity this morning to visit Probationary Constable Jack Hibbert and his family. I'm really pleased to say that Jack was awake this morning. We had a lovely conversation. He's a really positive young man. Tragically, we know that he is going to lose the sight in one eye as a result of his injuries on the weekend. Jack is incredibly comforted by the knowledge that, as his Commissioner, I have given him an undertaking that we will support him. We will find appropriate duties for him depending on the nature of that injury and his capacity. His family wanted to say thank you to the many members of the community who have provided messages of support to them and the overwhelming support of the Blue family. Constable Scott Dyson underwent further surgery this morning. He remains in a critical and stable condition. Our thoughts and all of our prayers are with he and his family. For both officers, it will be a long road to recovery. The policing family has wrapped around both officers and will ensure that we are there for the long run. Funeral services, as the Premier mentioned, commence today. There will be a significant police presence around each of the funerals to ensure that each family, friend and loved one feels comforted and safe. We will be there and stand alongside the victims. The crime scene we had hoped to release today. Unfortunately, it has taken longer to process that crime scene than we had hoped. Crime scene will be returned from the homicide squad back to the Police Area Command this afternoon. There are a number of really important processes that need to be undertaken before that is returned to the public. The first is the zakah, which is a Jewish religious process that will occur. Then we'll have Fire and Rescue New South Wales process the crime scene. It's really important that when we return the park and the surrounds to the public, that the amenity that they expect is there. The last thing we want to do is to further traumatise members of the public. We'll also offer families of those victims and those impacted directly the opportunity to walk through the scene should they wish to, as a mark of respect. Can I also just remind everyone, this is not a time for retribution. This is a time for calm, a time for respect and a time for peace. The last thing we need in the community at the moment is division. So when the Premier speaks about the activities that government are looking to introduce, it's important to know that they are supportive of community harmony. What we saw last Sunday is completely unacceptable. It's not something that belongs in New South Wales, and it's certainly not something that the New South Wales Police will tolerate. We are committed to stand alongside the Jewish community of New South Wales, but every community. My commitment. That's very much part of the critical incident investigation at the moment. I'd like to be able to work through that process thoroughly. It's premature for me to comment on that. We work very closely with the Jewish CSG and the community, but I would rather, in fairness, wait until that's thoroughly investigated.
Commissioner, can I ask, a father of one of the victims made a point to me last night that there is perhaps a need for police to have access to greater firepower. And currently there are those who have access to long arms, but it takes them some time to turn up. It is also a position shared by some police on the front lines. So my question to you is, are you going to look at, and is there a need for frontline police to have greater access to more firepower, not necessarily on them, but perhaps in the boot of the car?
We will absolutely look at that. Part of any incident like this, and this is the most significant tragic incident we have had in many years, is to review our policies, to look at our resources, to look at the way we go about doing things. As the Commissioner, I have a commitment to my officers, and that is to keep them safe. The same as a police force, we have a commitment to the community, and that's to keep them safe. So this incident has highlighted the need to look at that. Historically, New South Wales Police operational officers have only used handguns because our traditional form of contact we've had where we've had to use our firearms has been in close quarters. What happened on Sunday has changed that dynamic, and it's important as an organisation we consider everything to keep our officers and the community safe.
Commissioner, what would you have to say about the officer who shot the offenders, given he's now been identified? What do you make of his actions and how is he doing?
Can I say, I'm unable to actually confirm that. I know that the Telegraph have reported that. I know it's been widely reported. We're still awaiting ballistic examination before we can confirm who actually fired that shot. I am incredibly proud of the officer who's been identified, as I am of every police officer who was there on that day. The bravery they went through to approach and resolve that situation is incredible.
Commissioner, when in 2023 did G use firearms?
I don't have that date in front of me. I think it was June from memory.
Premier, you've mentioned the cap on the
Thanks,
number
mate.
of guns. How many guns will people be allowed to own? And are those two measures that you set out, on the gun crackdown and the limits to protests when there's a terrorist designation, is that the full list of bills that Parliament will deal with next week?
No, not necessarily. It's a fast-moving situation. We've made a decision to update the media as quickly as possible in relation to this legislation, primarily because we will be, the truth of the matter is we will be pushing it through Parliament in a short space of time. So as it becomes available, as it goes through our senior leadership group inside Parliament, we'll be speaking about it publicly, but it's not necessarily the end of the reforms that we're contemplating. It's not necessarily the end. We're looking at quite a few policy areas.
How many guns? How many guns?
Legislation to be drafted?
It's being drafted as we speak.
How many guns will
Sorry.
be finalised?
It's hard to know because in many cases, particularly in relation to restrictions on protests, there are constitutional issues, so it has to be drafted in a particular way. We have to be very clear about the designation and the reason for it. I'm being crystal clear about it. I am worried about a combustible situation and community harmony, and that's the reason we would introduce this legislation. It's begun, the drafting process has begun, but when it's completed, well, I'll let you know.
Back to how many guns?
That's a very good point. I don't have a final number. It's still the subject of internal deliberations, but certainly Western Australia is leading the country at 5, but I think that's too many.
On your legislation,
Can
Premier, can I just ask?
Yes,
on
sorry,
your
Anne.
legislation-
I'll go around.
Hunting as a reason, a legitimate reason for having a firearm. Is that something you're going to review, particularly as a lot of these guns are in the suburbs of Sydney?
Yeah, we are going to review that. But the best mechanism to handle it, we haven't worked out yet. I mean, these are the measures that we think we can announce today and indicate to you where the legislation will go, but it's not the end of it. We're also in the middle of discussions with stakeholder groups, particularly gun restriction groups, or I'm not saying that correctly, organisations that are interested in gun safety. We're speaking with them about what they would hope to see in the legislation as well.
Premier,
Premier,
can I just ask about the legislation?
Yes,
There are two sides to all of this.
of course.
Nobody wants to see disgusting violent protests, the same as nobody, of course, wants to see what happened on the weekend. But it will be hard not to face questions or protests about the fact that in response to what has happened on Sunday, you will seek to reduce people's freedoms. You will seek to reduce access to firearms, and you will seek to reduce their ability to protest. That is a fair point, is it not?
Look, I think that is fair, but I have a responsibility to keep the community safe, to ensure that people can walk down the street without being in fear of being killed, to ensure that we have a wonderful community in Australia. We really do. Multicultural Australia is something that I believe in, but the truth of the matter is you need strict rules in place to ensure that our society is successful. And unfortunately, when you've got a terrible situation where people have been killed, mowed down in great number just because of their religious faith, I think it would be a horrible situation to see a mass demonstration. I'm just going to finish. I'm not going to go, guys. I'm going to take all your questions, but I want to get... No, you can't. I'm going to finish my answer. I think there's...
problem not Islamic jihadism?
I'm just going to keep going with my answer.
Jihadism, though, that instead of
So the truth of the matter is, right now, we've got a responsibility to keep the community safe. And that's in my view, a mass demonstration on this scale would be so divisive for our community. It would light a fire that I think would be difficult to extinguish, yes.
Premier, when you talk about mass demonstration, who are you referring to exactly? Because there's a lot of conflation that's happening within the media that protests lead to violence because some chants are being set. Yet the events on Sunday were not related to a protest at all. Can you specify the police force, yourself, what is the legislation going to look at in terms of what or which groups
I can.
you're going to target?
We're not going to target any particular group. This will be a blanket. This will be a blanket rule in place during a terrorism designation. We'll be looking at Form 1 applications. Now, I can't, the Police Commissioner can't, no one can promise a group of people meeting on a street corner won't go ahead. It's not possible to do that. But what we can promise is that the streets won't be taken over with a mass demonstration that could lead to community disharmony and divisions that are very difficult to pull back together. We've got a monumental task in front of us at the moment. It is huge. We've got a grieving community, but they've been targeted as a result of actions of somebody else in our community. It's a huge responsibility to pull the community together, and I think we need a summer of calm and togetherness, not division. I know that there are concerns about issues around the world, but I'm worried about what's happening in Sydney right now. James.
When you say terrorism designation, what do you mean specifically? Do you mean terrorism investigation?
No, you'll note that on Sunday night a terrorism designation was recommended to the Police Commissioner, and the Police Commissioner applied it. Yeah, so under the legislation there's a specific definition in relation to terrorism designations.
So when the police are investigating a terrorist
No, when they declare something a terrorist act, there's a particular form or legislation that they apply, the terrorism designation. This will flow from that.
How long will that be in place? The blanket rule preventing Form 1s from being accepted whilst the terrorism designation is in place?
At the moment, we're looking at the timescales to ensure that it's consistent with, obviously, our obligations under the Australian Constitution, the implied freedom of political communication. So I'm going to have to report back to you about that. Hang on a sec, but the truth of the matter is we've obviously spoken with the Crown Solicitor, and we're comfortable, or confident I should say, that we can craft legislation to achieve these ends.
How long would you like that to be?
Well, I'm going to be guided by the official advice.
Obviously, got a gut instinct. How long would you like it to be? How long would you like it to be?
Well, I'm going to be guided by the experts. I don't think that's an unreasonable answer.
Premier, do we have a problem in the community with ISIS-inspired Islamist ideology, and will you punish hate preachers?
Well, clearly we do. I mean, it would be self-evidently crazy to see the circumstances on Sunday and turn a blind eye to that radicalisation. It's terrible to see. We need to do everything we can to ensure that we don't see it proliferate in our community, but it's a difficult task. One of the reasons why we've moved comprehensive changes to hate speech laws in New South Wales is to go in part and achieve that goal. But I mean, I want to make it clear, I indicated immediately after hearing about the events on Sunday night that we need to do things differently and be open to change, and that we've got a responsibility to pull the community together and not add to the division.
Why do you think, sorry, just a follow-up, why do you think the Prime Minister's been so reluctant to say the words?
What words are they?
Islamist ISIS-inspired terror.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not aware that he's not. I mean, I've been in conversations with him, with the Police Commissioner. This is a big part of the investigation that's taking place into this horrible crime. So I'm not aware that he's not. I mean, I think it's on everybody's... It's at the top of everybody's concern, and in terms of a remedy for this horrible crime, it's something that we have to confront.
Premier, Josh Frydenberg gave a speech in Bondi a little earlier today. He called out a list of anti-Semitic events. In that speech, he referred to the Opera House protest, boycotts on Jewish businesses, firebombing. In that speech, he also called for a ban on hate preaching. What's your response to that speech? What do you think the state response should be to this event? And how do you think the federal government should appropriately respond to eliminating extremism and anti-Semitism?
Well, look, I mean, it's difficult for me to give you a running commentary about what should happen at the federal level, just not because I'm not interested, it's just that I've got a full book here, and I'm obviously responsible for state legislation, and there are things that we can do. We moved a new criminal offence for intentionally inciting racial hatred. That was heavily opposed by many in the Parliament. In fact, the Sunset Clause was added to the bill, but I felt it was absolutely necessary to protect people in our community from that horrible, racist attacks that we've seen in our community over the last 2 years, the banning of Nazi symbols, we've introduced legislation in relation to Nazi gatherings. There's been the move-on offences in relation to places of worship, because I believe that it competed with another fundamental right that you have in a multicultural community, the right to religious expression. So these are changes that we've made in a reasonably short space of time, and we want them to work. I mean, they are in place to ensure that those that decide to rip apart our community and divide Australian against Australian are breaking the law. And I don't apologise for the fact that we don't have the same free speech laws that they have in the United States. It's clear that we don't. We don't have the same set of regulations. It's not embedded in our constitution the same way it is in the US. But I would argue that in 2025, within our community, with people from different races and religions from all over the world, we need a set of rules that's good for us, that works for our community, and I think these are consistent with those changes.
How do you actually regard that speech from Josh Frydenberg and the specific sort of roadmap he laid out within that speech?
I'm really sorry, I was at a funeral. I didn't watch it.
Commissioner, can I just be on the critical incident investigation? When do you expect that to be completed, and will you release the contents of that public?
It'll be an internal investigation. It's oversighted by the Professional Standards Command, but also independently by the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission. It will take some time to complete. We have 14 involved officers. Obviously, there was a significant response to it. We want to make sure that it's a thorough investigation.
On some of the matters around operational matters.
Sorry,
on some of the operational matters that have been disclosed publicly, how can the public have confidence that they will be dealt with in an appropriate manner if it's held internally?
Because, as I've said, there is independent oversight from the left. They ensure that there is probity throughout that investigation. I've been really clear on the way through here. I want this to be a transparent but a very thorough investigation. We want to understand the circumstances, be that for the joint counter-terrorism investigation or for the critical incident investigation.
Is there an update on the charging of that gentleman of the gun?
We're currently awaiting his medical condition to be appropriate for us to do that. It's important that he has appropriate cognitive ability at the time. When you're on medication, we would argue for his fairness, we need to make sure that he's able to understand exactly what's happening.
Do you feel let down by the security services? I mean, obviously there was some gap that's, you know, there was not the intelligence that you needed to monitor this guy or know what was happening.
I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment on that at the moment. I'm really focused on the brave and heroic actions of my officers. Our police did a fantastic job with what was there.
Commissioner, has ASIO passed on concerns about Naveed Akram to New South Wales Police at any point?
I would have to take that away and come back to you. Certainly, I think the Director of ASIO has indicated that they were aware of Naveed Akram in 2019. There would have been some conversations. We don't always get the entirety of an ASIO investigation quite rightly. There will be some matters that will be of national security that will stay there, so I would have to advise.
And would ASIO information ever be considered by New South Wales Police when determining a firearms application?
So the use of intelligence in adjudicating a firearms licence is something that is additional. It's not actually required by the Firearms Act, but our firearms register ensure the thorough and rigorous process do consider intelligence.
Commissioner, how long do you expect the offender to be in hospital, and when he is charged, will he go straight to Supermax?
I can't answer the question as to how long. That will depend on his medical condition. We will look to proceed with him in the hospital. From there, he will be transferred to an appropriate correctional facility. I don't want to speculate on that until such time as he goes through the process in fairness.
When was the last time you checked on guns, firearms owned by the G Akram?
We did a firearms inspection in December 2023.
Commissioner, would you like to see a Royal Commission? Commissioner, would you like to see a Royal Commission, perhaps? Premier, how quickly could a Royal Commission begin to ensure there is full transparency here and everyone has the opportunity to answer full and frank questions publicly?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very fair question. We're contemplating that at the moment, and we'll have more to say soon. It's not complicated but it is the fact that there will be a criminal prosecution that will take place. Charges are expected to be laid soon. So how I don't want to say compete, but how it runs side by side with that is something that we need to consider, and we need to take advice, because I just say this is hugely important. Right now, The priority for the police is a successful prosecution for justice for the victims, and nothing can get in the way of that. Yes, last one.
You talked about a combustible environment that we're living in.
Yep.
In a social cohesion frame. Are you worried that so-called hate preachers and extremists, if there are laws that are rushed, it would drive them underground, it would help them recruit members in Telegram channels and so on, and rather than it be out in the open and public and transparent in front of authorities, that they're driven more underground?
Well, look, I mean, I'm going to separate those questions. Firstly, I am worried about the dissemination of hateful, bigoted, racist language in our community. But I would say that if you've got lax laws in place in relation to hate speech, it's my view that it emboldens people to go further. They believe that it's somehow socially acceptable, that it won't be punished, that it won't be met by the law, that civic society won't say, we're not interested in this. And I need to, as much as move this legislation, send a clear message that we are not going to stand for it. It leads to horrible criminal violence, and we need to rule a line in the sand. Thanks, everybody.
National Cabinet plan on guns.
You've been listening to Flashwire, powered by Mencari.com, where facts still matter and stories still mean something. If you believe in independent journalism with impact, hit subscribe and share this episode. Your support keeps truth alive.
Breaking. Verified. Australian. When the story breaks, we don't wait. We verify, explain, and bring you the facts straight from the source.
Now, Optus has clearly failed here. Optus have failed to put safety first.
Company Optus and its parent company Singtel offer commercial
discussions based as friends and trusting. And part of our discussions, informally as well as formally,
the whole world came together, to be honest. So many countries that you wouldn't have even thought of it, they came together. The world has come together.
Now, we do need to draw a line in the sand when it comes to the protests that we continue to see in this country.
The Flashwire is your rapid response breaking news podcast, a stripped down, adrenaline-paced bulletin that drops minutes after major stories break. It's designed for listeners who want accuracy and speed, not noise. Think of it as the audio equivalent of a newsroom's red alert light turning on. Each episode runs under 5 minutes, short enough to drop between scrolls, but packed with verified updates, eyewitness info, expert sound bites, and a forward look at what happens next. No spin, no filler, just what you need to know and what comes next.